We're back on the Robert Ray Cooking Show. Today I have my friend with me who's a statistics manager at a national cookie company. And we will be doing an experiment to find out whether chocolate chips affect the overall deliciousness of chocolate chip cookies. And we will be testing that through our deliciousness meter. First, we need to know a little bit more about statistics. Number one, we need to know what a population is. So that is the entire group of individuals we want information about. So in this case, since we are doing this for my friend, our population is all the cookies that they produce at their cookie company. We also need to know what a sample is, which is the part of the population that we are actually going to examine in order to gather information. In this case, because we are helping my friend out, the sample that we use will be certain cookies from each of his factories. Sampling is asking a few individuals to find out information about many. This is a process we use to find out about the whole population.
Hi, I'm Maddie from the St. Crumble Cookie Company, and in order to test the deliciousness of our cookies, we are carrying out an experiment. An experiment is when you deliberately impose some sort of treatment on what you're testing in order to observe a response. In this case, deliciousness, which should be tested by our deliciousness meter. The individuals on which the treatment is imposed are called the experimental units, or if they're humans, they're called subjects, but in this case, since they're cookies, they're experimental units. We could have conducted a sample survey in order to find out what the most delicious kind of cookie is amongst our cookie fans across America, but this would have introduced voluntary response bias because the people would be responding to our questions based on their own will, and usually that is fueled by negative feelings. It also could have introduced response bias, such as respondents lying. Other forms of response bias include an interviewer whose attitude suggests that some answers are more desirable than others, or the race or gender of the interviewer. And another form of response bias is when there are inconsistencies in someone's memory when you're asking them about the past. Another way we could have found out about the deliciousness of each kind of our cookie would be through an observational study, which is if we would have watched our cookie fans while eating cookies and observed their responses to each kind of cookie. But only experiments can prove causation.
Back to our experiment. We need to set up our sample design, which is the method used to choose the sample from the population. The best way to do this is through a simple random sample, which can also be referred to as an SRS. This is when you take a certain amount of individuals from the population, chosen in a way that each individual has an equal chance of being selected. Thus, bias, or the systematic favoring of certain outcomes, is avoided. A good way to determine which cookies of the population will be in our sample is to use a random digits table, or in this stats book, table B. With the random digits table, we would assign each of our 10 factories a number. So we would, in order to minimize the amount of numbers we need to use, we could label 1, 0, 1, 1 all the way up to 9, and that would give us our 10 factories. And then looking at the digits table, we can go down the line, and so the first number, 1, would tell us we should take a batch from whichever factory we labeled as 1. Next one would be 9, so we would take a batch from whichever factory we labeled as 9, and we would continue down the whole line in order to randomly assign what batches we took from which factories. Randomly assigning these prevents undercoverage, which is when a group in the population is left out of the sampling process. Back with our statistician.
For our experiment, we chose to take an SRS including all of the factories, but we could have taken a stratified random sample in which we took a sample from each individual factory and then analyzed observations, or we could have used a blocked random sample by taking all of the observations from all of the factories and then, after doing the SRS, observing them based on individual factories. In our experiment, there could be lurking variables. Lurking variables are those variables which are not the explanatory response variables but can impact the results of the experiment. Lurking variables become confounding when they cannot be distinguished from the explanatory variable. In order to lessen the effects of the lurking variables, we have included a control group, which consists of plain cookies, which provides a basis with which to compare our results.
So this has been a very special episode of Robert Ray Cooking Show with Matt. Now it's time for my friend to show me their secret recipe for cookies, and we will show you how to make your very own cookies after the break.